channel has been set up to make sure that anyone can observe our democratic meetings. Please therefore remember that this meeting could be watched anywhere at any time by anyone with access to the internet. There is a slight delay between the meeting and the broadcasting of around 30 seconds. Webcast officer, please can you commence the broadcast and confirm?
Yeah, that's live now.
Lovely, thank you. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Performance Management Board. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings. For ease, these are as follows. Only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know when you want to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce speakers in the order of the request to speak, unless there is a point of order which will be prioritised. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Members are asked to mute your microphone when not speaking and consider turning off your video to reduce interference on the audio feed. Please bear in mind there may be a lag between speaking and other attendees hearing you. Presentations, images or video footage should have been made available to you in advance of the meeting and will be visible on the screen. Please indicate via the chat function if there is a problem. When referring to a report, please quote the page and paragraph number. There is no private business for this evening. However, members are reminded that it is their responsibility to make sure that their venue and connection is private. If you lose connection at any point and are unable to immediately rejoin, then please call the meeting facilitator. Contact details have been provided. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the Access of Information Regimes, FOI/EIR, and is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation, and the Council's Code of Conduct. For this meeting, councillors are identified by a prefix of councillor before their name. There are officers in attendance, and these are identified with the prefix of officer. There is a minute taker for this meeting and one meeting facilitator. Members, we have received no apologies for tonight's meeting. However, I have been informed that Councillor Raymond has advised he may be late in joining the meeting. I can therefore confirm that the meeting is quorate. The Performance Management Board consists of the following members. Councillors Coleridge, Coulthard, Dervish, Everard, Radley, Raymond, Rose, Schweer and Unsworth. The officers for this meeting are Tracy Headford, Business Solutions Manager, James Sinclair, Commercial Manager, Emma Wisby, Governance and Members Manager, and Jessica Mann, Governance and Members Officer. My name is Chloe Waite and I'll be the meeting facilitator for this meeting. I will now hand over to the Chairman, Councillor Radley. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chloe. So good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Performance Management Board. My name is Councillor Mick Radley and I will be chairing this meeting. I'm being assisted by a governance officer and a meeting facilitator who will help me identify when people want to speak and manage the notifications through the chat function. I obviously can't see you all at the same time, so please let me know through the chat function if there are any issues with your internet connection. Please also remember to mute your microphone when you finish speaking. Members, for this meeting, I will seek your agreement. When I seek your agreement, silence will be taken as assent. As the meeting facilitator has confirmed the attendance of members and officers for this meeting, I shall now proceed with the business of the meeting. So agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. Do I have any apologies for absence? I don't think we do.
Chairman, we've had Mr. Councillor Raymond join the meeting since the facilitator started the script. Could we please test his connection, please, before we proceed further?
Councillor Raymond.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, Emma and members.
That sounds fine.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that and welcome, Councillor Raymond. So if there are no further apologies, I'll now proceed to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do members have any disclosory pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interests, or non-pecuniary interest that they wish to declare this evening? Please state the item and the nature of your interest. Please indicate you wish to speak in the chat function. Just checking the chat function. No, I didn't see anything there. So, where are we back here? Okay, there are no declarations. I'll proceed to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Members, for this item, I will be seeking your agreement. Therefore, silence will be assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue in respect of the minutes, please indicate via the chat function. Do any members have an objection to the approval of the minutes as an accurate record of the meeting held on the 3rd of February 2021?
Sorry, Chairman, I can't get onto the chat function. I just need to raise an issue.
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
Sorry about that.
Councillor Rose, please go ahead, Councillor Rose.
Yes, I have a problem with technology here, Chairman. I can't get into the chat. Yes, it's just on the minutes of the meeting from the 3rd of February, page 10, right at the bottom, the very last paragraph.
Yeah.
It was agreed that I would receive a written response about the financial costs involved with the development of Whittam Town Council Park entrance. I've not received such a document. Thank you.
Chairman, if I may assist on that point, that's not a point of clarity in terms of proving the minutes as an accurate record. That's an action point arising out of the budget scrutiny subject, which is not the purpose of raising a point of order in respect to the minutes under this item. That's a slightly separate matter. However, we'll pick that up separate to the approval of the minutes outside the scope of this meeting, if I may, Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, apologise, Chairman.
Okay, no problem, Councillor Rose. Important that you get a response anyway, so I'm sure officers will take that away and manage that separately. So I don't have any further questions through the chat function, so thank you, members. Your silence is agreement that the minutes are an accurate record. Thank you, members. We'll now move to proceed to item 4, which is public question time. Members, there are no registered speakers for tonight's meeting. We will now proceed to item 5, which is commercialisation of Braintree District Council services, terms of reference and work programme 2021-22. Members, this item is set out on pages 5 to 13 of your agenda. Please can I invite Emma Wisby, Government and Member Manager, to set out the report. Emma.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Members, this is the first time that your scrutiny review for this civic year been brought to you. So the topic for the scrutiny for the Performance Management Board this year is the commercialisation of Braintree District Council services. If I can set out the background to how this topic has come forward. The detail is set out in the report, but just to summarise, probably this time last year, we did a call for topics for the scrutiny reviews. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, the scrutiny reviews have been delayed. So we are a little bit behind than our programme that we would currently be. The topics were put forward by all members in the former scrutiny arrangements, and those topics were assessed by the management board of the authority and the chairman of the scrutiny committee. So that would be the committee chairman of PMB, the partnership development group, I'm going to do myself a disservice here, the corporate governance group and the partnership development group, and so those chairmen come together and looked at the topics. And this topic of commercialisation was selected to come forward for the Performance Management Board. So the biggest part of the work that has been undertaken to date is to flesh out the terms of reference for the scrutiny review. As members know, each scrutiny review is guided by a set of terms of reference, which is the framework at which you will examine this topic. So members, if I can just turn you to the Appendix 1, which is set out on page 9 of the report. Tonight, we will be seeking your approval of these terms of reference. These terms of reference, as I've said, have been examined by the Management Board and the Chairman of the Scrutiny Committees. They are based upon the original submission for commercialisation of the council services, but what has happened in developing the terms of reference is that we've reflected upon the topic, looking at the resources and where this topic can go in the realms of the local authority and obviously of the council. The terms of reference have got 5 bullet points. They are drafted in such a way that it gives guidance and freedom at the same time. And it also, within the terms of reference, we've also got our lead officer, which is actually specified as to be confirmed, but it's actually James Sinclair who's with us this evening. I will introduce James a bit further on in this presentation. So the scrutiny review will look at commercialisation of BD services. Now, members, you're going to hear this from me several times through this scrutiny review. You're not here to fix commercialisation. You're here to review and reflect, and based upon evidence gathering, to make recommendations to the Executive, the Cabinet, on commercialisation. So the terms of reference gives you a pathway to look at what is commercialisation within local authorities, how that can be achieved, what are the powers to do that. You know, look at what services within the councils that could develop a commercial limb to bring income generation. What are the barriers? What is the benefit of commercialisation, and what plans and policies has the authorities got in place? So whilst the terms of reference are all been drafted in sort of what does it need, it also needs an opportunity to reflect what is already in place. So at this stage, Chairman, members have had the opportunity to read the terms of reference. Could I just pause at this point to see if any members have got any questions on the terms of reference before proceeding further on to the other parts of the report, please?
Yes, indeed. I think it's a good opportunity just to break there and pick up any specific questions. So, members, please indicate through the chat function if you wish to ask a question regarding the terms of reference. We have the first one is Councillor Everard. So, Councillor Everard, would you like to ask your question, please? You need to pass it. Well done.
Well, this makes perfect sense. And but what I would like to ask is, I would imagine that we've got several things that we do already in this sense, such as maybe cutting grass and other things. But I'd like to know what else, please.
Okay, so at this point of the, sorry, Chairman, I do apologise for interrupting. So at this point, we are not evidence gathering. We're looking at the terms of reference to see whether they are going to be, whether you agree with these officers and the chairman of the scrutiny committees feel that they give you a framework to which you can conduct. Part of the terms of reference would actually provide an opportunity for an evidence gathering session where James Sinclair, as a commercial manager, will come along and give an outline of what we are already doing in a commercial within the commercial realm, and to give a knowledge leveler for members, because obviously all members have a different idea of what commercialisation means within local government. It's not just some of the small scale contracts, but it could be some large projects. So we're not here to look at any particular contract that we have, but certainly as part of the evidence gatherings, members will get information that sort of sets out where we are delivering already under the commercialisation agenda and within our existing policies and strategies. So James would provide that information as we go forward. But at the moment, we don't have a list of commercialisation projects or matters that fit under that umbrella to present to you this evening. So it's something that you will get in time, but just not tonight.
Thank you, Emma.
Okay, thank you, Emma. So I'll now hand over to Councillor Unsworth, who has a question. Councillor Unsworth.
Thank you. It's just very on taking on board what Emma's saying, trying to keep it at a sort of strategic level within the terms of reference. Where do you think liability to the council might fit in within the terms of reference? You've got barriers to entering, but is that something you're going to expand on a little bit in terms of liability? Because I think in terms of liability to the council for commercialising our activities, whatever they might be, is quite an important heading.
Yes, certainly that's something that would be naturally explored. Certainly with commercialisation, when the authority looks at, and I'm sort of obviously James will give you more information as we go forward, but looking at barriers, hindrance, liabilities arriving out of commercialisation, because that could be one of the matters that is considered as to why not go down a commercialisation route, because the risks to the authority may be so significant it outweighs the benefit of going down that commercialisation project. So that's something that will certainly be revealed through the scrutiny. So what would normally happen is that we would look at provide members with information around the frameworks in which we operate, known barriers, and things about liabilities, because obviously liabilities is a huge area which you have to attach appropriate weight to when you're deciding to go forward with a commercialisation project. So it would come under certainly within the terms of reference, and that's something that James I know will expand upon at a future meeting where he's providing information as a witness to the scrutiny review.
Okay, so sorry, just if I may,
yes,
Chair, sorry, just
yes.
I just wondered if it might be highlighted as a specific heading in the terms of reference rather than assumed somewhere. That was what I was thinking in terms of reference. So that
we try to draft terms of reference in its broadest sense, but just because it's not set out specifically would not prevent that from being naturally raised, because we do follow natural lines of inquiry through the terms of reference. But certainly liabilities would be something that would be naturally picked up through looking at scrutiny through the local government lens. So it would be picked up.
Okay, thank you for that response, Emma. So now over to Councillor Coldridge, please. Councillor Coldridge, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chairman. It was regarding the key questions. The second point is identifying commercial services provided by other local authorities. Conversely, do we need to also look at services that are provided by the private sector for district councils, and whether Braintree Council could take over those services or provide them for other councils?
That is something that can be explored through the terms of reference. So when we've got, I don't know what commercial services are provided by local authorities, and then sort of, are there any services within the council which could be developed for commercial limb or income generation? The third point, that is where we would look at, you know, if we are buying in services and we've got expertise within this authority or within our local government family, that is something that James, you know, could expand upon through the scrutiny. So it would come within that third bullet point, and I think through the natural lines of inquiry that would be picked up through when we're reviewing services which have or haven't got a commercial limb to, because one of the things that we've got is looking at the barriers, and the barriers may be that actually the private sector offering is so cost effective we can't compete. So that's something that will come through the natural lines of inquiry. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think for now, at least, Emma, that is all the questions. If you'd just like to continue, I think you've got a few more.
Okay, so broadly, I'm picking up that members are happy with the terms of reference for the scrutiny review. It gives you the flexibility that you need to follow natural lines of inquiry, but again, bring you back to a set of references so the scrutiny remains on topic and deliverable in terms of looking at commercialisation. So at this point, if I can just introduce James Sinclair. Now, James is with us tonight as one of our lead officers on the scrutiny review, but he will also be at times a witness for the scrutiny review. So for members, it will sometimes be a little bit unclear as to what capacity James may be talking. So even in one conversation, James could be talking as the lead officer, but then because he is the council's commercialisation manager, he can then provide information and evidence. So every time you see James, we will try to give guidance in what capacity that you'll be seeing James, just to make sure that you make best use of James in his various hats and resources to the committee. So, Chairman, could I just invite James to introduce himself, please?
Indeed, yes, James. Over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Radley. Yeah, hi everyone. James Sinclair, Commercial Manager, as Emma just said, of the authority. So, very much look forward to talking to you about the work that we do across commercialisation agenda and the element that I have responsibility for, but also where that fits across a broader context of commercialisation across the authority. I think there's particular focus around this at the moment, particularly given current economic climate and the need to generate savings. So I very much look forward to talking with you and answering your questions.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman. So Chairman, so we've touched upon the terms of reference. So if I can turn members to page 10 of the agenda, which is Appendix 2, which is the online resource library that we've already identified for members. So members, what we've attempted to do is to signpost you to current online resources that provide information about commercialisation in the local government context. A lot of the information we're directing to is on the Local Government Association website. The purpose of this is to enable members to get an understanding of what commercialisation looks like within local government, because we all make assumptions as to what it is based upon our experience and knowledge, but it's always an opportunity to learn more by looking what's out there. Now, as you know, the Local Government Association provides huge amount of resources on a number of subjects, and what we've just tried to do is to highlight to members those key resources within the LGA's website which we feel will be useful for you, which gives an insight to commercialisation, what that actually means, and obviously James's information to the committee will help to complement that and complement your understanding. And obviously he and I will do our best to answer any questions you have arriving out those documents. So we would strongly recommend, as a knowledge leveller for all members of the committee, to have a look at those resources. They are very straightforward. I hope all the hyperlinks do work for you, but if members do have any problems at all, then please let me know and we'll get those reissued to you. But they certainly did work when we published the agenda. We've also provided a list of Lga case studies. Now, we've provided these just for you to have an opportunity to read about commercialisation in other authorities, what they've looked at, the good, the bad and the ugly, I think, is what the LGA reports on those case studies. We haven't done everything, but we've just tried to give you a flavour of the case studies that are out there and across a number of authorities. The main thing we've tried to focus on is borough authorities or district authorities, just so you're not looking at authorities who've got different service obligations. So we've tried to keep it close to our level of local authority as possible. But we're not saying that these are examples you need to look at and compare. We're just providing this background information so you can see how commercialisation has been looked at in those authorities. So as time goes on and we become aware of more online resources, we will add to this list of hyperlinks. Where we come across documentation, we will share that with you, because obviously the more information that you have, the better scrutiny experience you will have. It'll also help you to form questions to analyse where we are in terms of commercialisation, but they're not provided for you to do a like for comparison. It's just to give you some background reading and knowledge, and just to see how it's done in other authorities. You could see them as a point of inspiration, or you could see actually there's some lessons to be learned from here, and then formulate some questions for your scrutiny reviews going forward. If members do become aware of any useful documents, articles, press releases regarding commercialisation within local government or the public sector, then please send those to me and Jessica Mann, and we will circulate those to members. We're pretty much of the view that members, this is your scrutiny review, so you need to take ownership. That means also conducting your own research, and where you do come across interesting articles about commercialisation through the various journals, publications that you read, please share those with us, and then we can share those with your committee. So we'll make sure that we've got the same resource as we've got forward. So do members have any questions about the resources that we're sharing today, or you're quite happy just to note that part of the report?
Emma, just before we move on, I think James would like just to say a few words to build on your comments.
Certainly, thank
James,
you.
over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Radley. Yeah, just to add that the LGA also offer some commercialisation training specifically for members, which may be really interesting as a kind of base level of knowledge around this agenda, and a sort of a good insight into a kind of broad range of commercial practice happening across the public sector.
Okay, thank you for that, James. Emma, does members have any further questions at this stage before we move on to the next part, which I think is the timing of work programme? No? I think this this sounds like a very interesting review, and I'm sure it will be add, if you like, hopefully to the benefit of the council in the longer term, short, medium term. We do have a budget shortfall, as you know, and anything we can help guide to help support that, so much the better. So that's good. So Emma, would you like now to talk about the work programme? Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
Timing.
Thank you, Chairman. So on page 12, members, which is Appendix 3, is the timetable of meetings for the PMB. Now, as I said to you at the beginning of the meeting, this scrutiny committee should really been conducted within this civic year. But as we know, due to the pandemic, a lot of the work of the authority has been delayed. So whilst the current scrutiny review has a target time to be completed by the end of this civic year, we know that is not achievable. But because we do work in civic years, what we are recommending to members is to extend the work, to extend the time period of this scrutiny review to take you into next civic year. And sort of look at delivering a report for really the winter of 2021. 22, yes, I'm just trying to work out our civic years. I'm not too sure how we got here. Time's gone so quickly. So we are asking members to allow us to extend this scrutiny review, because otherwise you're not going to be able to conduct this review. It'll be an artificial, and I'm sure you'd be very disappointed if you didn't give yourself the times needed to examine this very broad and interesting subject. So we've set out the timetable of meetings as it currently stands. Realistically, in terms of building your agendas, we will attempt to avoid adding too much heavy business to meetings where we've already got an existing programme workload. So that's sort of the meeting where you've got the scrutiny of the budget, or we have got other programmed work that has to come to this committee as part of its ordinary business. It may be that we also need to add in some additional meetings to make sure that we can get witnesses in at the correct time to provide information or to examine a particular point of the review. So the Appendix 3 sets out the timetable for the civic year, and it's really just seeking members' agreement if you're happy to extend the scrutiny review into the civic year for 21-22, and so we can achieve a good scrutiny review to then make recommendations to Cabinet at the end of it. So do members have any questions on the timetable? Okay.
No.
Okay. So members, what we're now seeking is really sort of where you want to go forward in your first evidence gathering session. So today is your introduction to subject and to accept the terms of reference, the timetable, and to understand where we'd like to go. What we as officers need is now is to get your direction as to what you want at your first evidence gathering session. If I may, Chairman, could I propose that your first evidence gathering session is a presentation by James to make sure that all members' knowledge around commercialisation is on the same level, and then at that meeting, James can bring forward the Council's existing policies and documents, so members can have sight of those to then inform what they want to do on their next steps. I'm open to sort of get members' feedback on that or any other area that they want to sort of get to grips with. But I do think, as in common with other scrutiny reviews, it is important that we do have that initial evidence gathering knowledge session with our key lead officers for this, which would be James. So, Chairman, could I ask you to?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I totally agree. From my own point of view, I think my knowledge of what our current commercialisation picture looks like is very limited, and I guess maybe others might have the same situation. So, you know, having that presentation at the beginning, if you like, to sort of set the scene and see calibrate where we are, I think it would be a very, very useful input. So do I have any other questions? I think I might have a couple of questions on the chat function. So just let me gather that. So Councillor Unsworth, I believe you're the first. So Councillor Unsworth, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. It's just, yeah, I think understanding what commercialisation actually looks like. Could we also have some sort of overview as to what services we're looking to commercialise as well, just to put that into context? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, could I just caveat, obviously we, as a scrutiny committee, you're entitled to information, and particularly around sort of future views. The only caveat that I would place upon is that if it's involving a topic which is currently under negotiations or contract considerations, we may not be able to have that discussion in public session because of the Council's commercial interest and the interests of other parties. So it may be that we have to hold some of our meeting in private session in order to give members information. I'm hoping that most of the evidence gathering we can do in public session, but just need to warn members that if they want to look at something specific which is currently on officers' workloads to deliver and achieve it, and it's at a sensitive time for the completion of that project or a delivery point within that project, we would need to take that part of the meeting in private session to protect the Council's commercial interest, because although we're in a Zoom meeting, this meeting is also published on the Council's YouTube channel to make sure that it is compliant to meet the publishing regulations. But that does mean that that there is a public way into a discussion which we want to potentially protect. So I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying we may have to change our traditional approach as to how we may have that conversations or how we share that information, because whilst I want you to be able to explore commercialisation, I also equally have to protect the authorities' interests. The way we can do that is to go into private session with the appropriate notice given through the publication of the agenda. Is that okay?
Councillor Unsworth, I think that was your question.
Thanks. It's just I appreciate if there's other ongoing commercial discussions, it might need to be private session, but I think it's also valuable to understand the sort of offering, if you like, as to what services we may be commercialising.
Hopefully, Chairman.
I agree. I think at least having the scoping of knowing what programs are in progress, if you like, without not necessarily exposing any commercial activity, it would be good to know what's happening rather as well, I think, as picking that up.
I mean, Chairman, I hope that we can do the majority of the evidence gathered in public session, but I just place that at the beginning, members' thoughts now, because obviously this is not a this is part of the council's current agenda, and there's lots of work that James is doing at the moment across the authority, and there's lots of things in the pipeline. So it's just making sure that if we do look at those topics, we do it in a sensitive way to ensure we deliver the scrutiny review, but also protect the authority's interests in those negotiations and delivery of those commercial arrangements. So,
okay, I think that's fine. Let's move on. Councillor Rose, your question, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm just thinking, Chairman, would it be of benefit to members, and I'd certainly think it would be benefit to myself, if we could have something like a members' development, but with James taking a lead on that, to give us a broad overview of commercialisation, because it's an area that, in my recollection, we've not gone into too much in previous years. And I just wondered if perhaps like a members' development type of platform might be useful for members. Thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, if I may just respond, that is the intention of the first evidence gathering session, which I asked members to consider at the beginning. We are not going to hold a member development evening on commercialisation as part of this scrutiny review. You as members of scrutiny will have a knowledge levelling session, and that's what I'd like your first session to be. So as I said, to ensure that all members have the same basic level of understanding what commercialisation. What we are not going to do as part of this scrutiny review, unless the evidence gathering says we'd recommend to the executive that it should commercialisation should be on the member development programme as a topic, but in the context of members of this committee, that's what I hope your first session would be.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, Councillor Rose, does that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes, it does. It's I'm not going to be over specific, but if it comes under the terms of reference for review, then yes, I'm happy with that.
Hopefully, the first evidence gathering will enable us to do part of that. Okay, Councillor Coleridge, next, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it's already covered under the terms of reference, but in that first session, would it be possible to also cover what services are provided by other local authorities, just because I think that's an important part of understanding what is in scope of what we're doing.
Okay, is that in the time frame? Is that possible to have some indication the first time around, or is that a second stage? Emma?
I think the only thing become a question of timing, because I think James has got a lot of information that he can give in a first session, but I'm sure that James could give an outline, and then through the scrutiny review, it may be that members decide to actually explore a particular limb within that, but I would anticipate, and I'll ask James to answer for that, he could give a brief outline to then be explored at a later date as well. James,
would you like to comment, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. That's absolutely fine. I can provide some detail on what other local authorities do. We have a commercialisation group that we set up actually across a whole range of different districts. So we can take the learning from that, but also direct you to the information for the Local Government Association. There's a document called Enterprising Councils on there, which also talks about some of the other activities that are done, other commercial activities that have been done. So I'll try and sort of summarise some of those in the best examples as part of that first session.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you for that. Right, next to speak, is Councillor Courtauld. Councillor Courtauld, please ask your question.
Thank you, Chairman. Evening, James. We come across each other every 3 months or so. I was just thinking about the future of district councils, really, and I'm sure this will be a useful process, but if district councils are merged in due course, and we become what will we become? We become a unitary authority with some of our activities merged with the unitary authority, and some perhaps with parish councils. What's the timetable on that? Is there a firm timetable on that yet? And how would our deliberations be affected by that? I mean, are they in fact made irrelevant by that?
Chairman,
Yes,
we are still, the local government review restructuring is still quite an unknown timetable to us at the moment. I mean, we look to achieve the scrutiny review within the next civic year. So yes, I think in exploring this topic, the local government review is something that we need to bear in mind, because, well, when local government restructuring occurs, it's not just a case of just bringing a couple of authorities together. There quite often there's a change in powers. I mean, certainly as a previous officer of Essex County Council, I was there when they had the restructuring of local government, which resulted in the 2 unitary authorities in the south of the county. And actually there was a fundamental change of how those areas operated. So at the moment, we don't really know what it will look at or what it will mean to our powers, because there'll be changes in statute around how the authority operates and what is delivered, because it really does depend on the structure going forward. But in terms of scrutiny review, it's something that we probably need to have a mindset in looking at, because commercialisation often involves some very long contracts. It's something that needs to be borne in mind when we are looking at recommendations to the Cabinet. But at the moment, we still don't have an established timetable for the local reviews. But if we do get information that is relevant to the scrutiny review with that, we will certainly bring it to the committee, so you have that awareness also.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it's a question of a watching eye on the subject, and watch this space, I think, really. Okay. There's no more questions in the chat box, so I don't know if everybody else has any before we conclude this item. Does anybody have any further questions they wish to ask? Okay. Well, thank you very much to Emma and for James, and welcome, James, to this process. Members, we've been asked to agree the recommendation and the recommended decisions as set out on page 5 to 6 of the agenda. Members, I will take your silence as assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue, please indicate via the chat function. Please can I have members' agreement that you approve the report? Looks like I have silence. So in that case, thank you, members. Your silence is agreement. Thank you.
Chairman, could I invite you to ask to allow James to leave, because he's not required for the rest of the agenda.
Indeed, absolutely. We wouldn't hold you back. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and you're free to leave at any time you wish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, members. So we now proceed to item 6, which is the third quarter performance management report for 2021. Members, this item is set out on pages 14 to 52 of your agenda. Please can I invite Tracy Headford, the Business Solutions Manager, to set out the report. Tracy, over to you. You're connected now, so that's good.
Yes, wonders of technology.
Indeed. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So the third quarter performance report reports on the performance of the council between the 1st of October and the 31st of December. And the report was presented to Cabinet on Monday night, so the 8th of March. So you're getting this hot off the press, so to speak. So before I just go into the detail of the report, I do just need to make you aware of a slight error in the covering report that you've got and also in the summary section of the report, as it does state that there are 7 projects with an amber status. This should read 9 projects with an amber status. So apologies for that. This has now been corrected on the report that will be published on our website. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay, so in the third quarter, we've got 41 projects that are on track and progressing well. And we have 9 projects that have an amber status. Again, the majority of the reasons for having the amber status is due to the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. But obviously we'll just sort of go through these quickly with you. So the first project that we've got is around continuing the work on the redevelopment of the entrance of Whittam Town Park. This is obviously marked up as amber due to the delays that we had in the summer, which was caused by the pandemic. It has pushed the timescales back slightly. What has happened in the third quarter, though, is we have managed to get the tenders for the works to resurface the car park and remove the foundations of the previous building. And it is hoped that works will be able to start in the new year. So we're hoping that that is now sort of progressing well, but it will just push back the deadline for completing those works because of the delays we had in the summer. The next project is around the Superfast Broadband. Again, the installing the infrastructure was impacted by the pandemic and there were delays caused by that. So the previously anticipated timescales that have been set out by Superfast Essex and their contractors have gone back slightly. We are currently at 89% of the districts now able to access Superfast Broadband. And I think I mentioned this in the previous meeting that we had, that you can actually go onto a website and to access to see, an interactive map that says what's being done where, and so you can have a look at your own areas and sort of point people towards that as well. It's quite good. I have actually gone on there and had a look at it. So the next project is around continuing to support the NHS England around health facilities that we have across the district. There isn't really an update in respect to this project at this current time, mainly obviously because the Mid-Essex Clinical Commissioning Group and obviously NHS are focusing on responding to the pandemic, but they are obviously aware that we are there to continue to support them in these projects. And obviously once we can get things moving around the provision of these health projects, we will do. So we do still have the Live Well Hub as part of the regeneration scheme in the Braintree town, and obviously that is progressing well. And obviously we've got the surgeries at Sybil Headingham and Silverend and Whittam. They are progressing, but we just don't have, not progressing as we would hope they would have done had there not been a pandemic. So, but all in all, we do have to obviously give the pandemic the priority that it needs at the moment. So the response to the requirements of the environmental bill in relation to our waste and resources, and it also supports our climate change objectives. We haven't received any new consultations in the third quarter, and at the time of writing this report, the environmental bill was scheduled to go to the House of Commons in late January. I have heard that has now been put back to the autumn. So obviously that is going to delay it even further because it then needs to progress to the third reading before going to the House of Lords. So this is an area that we are keeping a close eye on as officers and managers, because obviously it's going to impact on future areas of work under our climate change strategy and obviously under our waste area as well. So it's something we are keeping a very close eye on so that we can obviously set out our priorities as to what we want to do in the future as well. So we will obviously look at that very closely. Researching and trialling alternative fuel vehicles. Again, at the time of writing this report, we were awaiting funding decisions around the medium-term financial strategy and the annual budget setting process, which obviously went to Cabinet and Council in February. So this project should now be progressing, but at the time of writing it was amber because we had to wait for those funding decisions before we could progress anything. The next project is improving the sports facilities at Braintree Sports and Leisure Centre. This hasn't really sort of updated from the previous one because of the pandemic and obviously the leisure facilities being closed again during the third quarter. The planned improvements obviously have been delayed, and they are on hold until we know what how we're going to come out of the pandemic, really. And that's kind of the same for the development of the 3G pitch at the Housestead Leisure Centre, although there was a report that went to Cabinet in February to give approval to get this sort of moving forward and to allocate the council's element of the work. So that has now happened. So we're hoping that works will start on that one in the fourth quarter, eventually turn green. Last couple of projects are around sort of considering and determine the future approach for our leisure centres. That has been marked up amber, obviously, because of the leisure centres being closed. We obviously need to look at how the leisure centres are going to work without the pandemic. And obviously, the future approach is now included in a wider piece of work, looking at the financial recovery of the fusion because of the impact of the pandemic. So it's kind of changed scope slightly, and obviously will form a larger piece of work, which we will continue to report on as well. And the last one, again, is just around sort of developing health priorities in various localities. So sort of working with the NHS primary care to see what else we can do. As I said earlier, their priorities are in relation to the pandemic, which is understandable at this time. But one thing I will say around sort of working with it, NHS and the Mid-Essex Clinical Commissioning Group, is that we do obviously have regular conversations with them in our area of helping out with the pandemic. So one thing we are doing is obviously building up those networks, building up those conversations, so that when we do get to work on this piece of work, we've already got those networks formed. And obviously that does help when you're sort of trying to work in these areas. So that will obviously help us when we do move forward. Moving on to the performance indicators, we do have a total of 25 performance indicators. As I've stated previously, we haven't set targets for all of them because of the disproportionate impact the pandemic would have on setting targets for them. Of the 14 performance indicators that have retained their targets, 7 have met or exceeded their targets, 4 have missed target by less than 5%, and 3 have missed target by more than 5%. So just taking you through those. The first one, as reported previously, is around the percentage of household waste. We do have the aspirational target, which is set by the Waste Partnership as our target of 60%. And in the third quarter, we achieved 45.61%. There's a number of reasons. One is obviously due to the fact that tonnage will be down in the third quarter, which is expected because of the suspension of the garden waste service that starts in end of November, December time. But another reason that's quite a new one really is the recycling tonnage is down quite a lot because we're receiving quite a high number of contaminated recycling. And obviously we cannot take the sacks if they do contain contaminated waste, because it impacts on the end process, and we can't obviously then process them, and there's costs involved in having to sort all that out. So we're having to sort of deal with the contamination at the front end and not actually take that, ask the residents to sort out their recycling and represent it for collection in a couple of weeks. Doesn't always happen like that. So we are looking at what messages that we can do to get people to not contaminate their waste, and obviously to encourage them to recycle. I do note this is not just related to Braintree in our district. There's a lot of districts that are experiencing this. And I do think that, Keep It and Tidy have even also got hold of the fact that recycling rates seem to be a little bit stagnant over the last few years. So there's obviously a lot that we're sort of working with other councils to see what we can do to sort of change behaviours, change habits to get our recycling rates moving. But as we said previously, there's been a lot of councils that reported these issues over the sort of pandemic as well. I think it's possibly because a lot more people are working from home. Moving on to the average waiting time for applicants on the disabled facilities grants. I mentioned at our last meeting that this isn't one that's going to be going away very soon. And obviously it's an impact that stemmed from the restrictions that were imposed right at the very first lockdown that prevented people from being able to go into the properties to sort of assess the works required, builders being able to quote and being able to get hold of materials. There was an added pressure in the third quarter from the team, the fact they did have issues with a long-term sickness in one member of the team, and we also had to reprioritise some of the resources in the team because we had one member of staff who could deal with the respond to the needs of the pandemic. But I will say that any urgent works that are required. So that's kind of like such as the installation of stair lifts, grab rails or showers to sort of keep people sort of independent. They are being prioritised and they are being installed quickly. It's more the works that are more complex and require sort of major building works or construction works. That is where the delays are occurring. But we do continue to monitor the situations. We do keep up to date with the residents and customers that this is impacting on. And they are aware that it's likely to take a bit of time to get back to how things are going to be prior to the pandemic. And obviously we're putting out all the stops and doing everything that we can to obviously make sure that we are working and doing what we can in given the restrictions that are imposed on us. The next one is the average call answer time in the customer service centre. This has reduced from the previous quarter and it's now down to 23 seconds against the target of 15 seconds. It is still a good call answering time. This customer service centre dealt with over 23,000 calls in that third quarter. On top of that, they had over 14,000 other inquiries through online forms or emails that they deal with. So one thing that we have identified, because we've been monitoring it quite closely, is that there are particular days where it is busy, and we're looking at the reasons, that they are busy on those particular days. Mondays is quite a bit of an issue. We are continuing to monitor that, and obviously we're going to look at how we resource the service moving forward so that we can resource Mondays better in the future. We are looking to appoint an apprentice, and we do possibly have a couple of retirements in the future. So obviously that's where we can then adapt our resourcing to make sure that we can resource more adequately through peak times. But at the moment, we do continue to just monitor at the moment. And obviously a lot of inquiries coming into the customer service centre over the third quarter were due to the number of changes that were put on the restrictions, because we went through the different tiers and obviously lockdown as well. So a number of phone calls from businesses and residents confused as to what they could and couldn't do throughout that period. Moving on to the amber performance indicators, so the ones that have missed target by less than 5%. The first one is the percentage of invoices paid within 30 days of receipt. This is improving, so we have achieved 98.72% against a target of 99.25%. In the third quarter, there were 2,926 out of 2,964 invoices processed within 30 days of receipt. And the finance team are looking at how we can get a new system in to help streamline the process even further, so we should be able to hit that target in the future. The second one is around percentage of stage 1 complaints responded to within 7 working days. Slightly missed target, achieving 88.49% against the target of 90%. We had 113 stage 1 complaints in the third quarter. 100 of those were responded to within the timescales. The delays that we did incur were mainly around more complex complaints that we received, and they're mainly sort of like in the planning area, some were in the operations area, and also in the environmental health, sort of relating to sort of COVID complaints, etc. So like I say, there were slightly more complex complaints. Customers are kept informed, so they do get an acknowledgement of their complaint, and then we do say it's going to take us a little bit longer to investigate this, and we'll respond by, and they do give a date. But it does just go over the 7 working days, unfortunately. The last two are collection rate for council tax and business rates. Council tax slightly down, only slightly under the target that we had from last year. Obviously, we are limited to our recovery action because of it, because of the restrictions on the magistrate courts, because they have been closed. We have really been focusing on sending out some very nice, gentle, soft reminders to customers and asking them to sort of like telephone us if they have got any problems paying, because obviously they are going to have to continue to collect this in future years anyway. And we are getting quite a good response to that. The same is happening again for the business rates customers as well. And obviously with the business rates customers there, the government obviously said that there's a number of businesses that didn't need to pay their business rates. They did get a retail relief on there, so that's meant that some businesses haven't actually got to pay anything this year. But overall, if you look across the performance across the Essex authorities, across the ranges, we are top on both of them. So although we might be underperforming for our own targets, we are top across all Essex authorities on both collection rates of council tax and collection rates of business rates. And I don't think that's something that we can sort of ignore. So we are still doing very, very well, really, in respect of that. So that's obviously going through the performance indicators. The report does also contain further information on our staffing levels, health and safety and complaints. Obviously, under our staffing levels, we do continue to do very, very well on the sickness side of things. Might be because we're having people working from home more. We haven't had so many sick days, because obviously we do have officers that are working some very long hours, doing a lot more than what they should be doing as well, on top of their normal day-to-day stuff. But overall, sickness is doing very, very well. In respect of our complaints, we've had 115 complaints in total in the third quarter, which is lower than the number of complaints we've received in previous quarters. Of those complaints, as I stated earlier, 113 are stage 1 complaints. 1 was escalated to a stage 2 complaint and 1 was escalated to a stage 3 complaint. So overall, very good on the complaints again in the third quarter as well. Moving on to the finance side of the report. It provides a very detailed update review of the financial position for the year as at the end of December, which looks where this report goes to. It examines the latest forecast for the spending on day-to-day service provision compared to the budget for the year, and it also includes a summary of Treasury management activities, projected movements on the general fund balance, and a summary of spending on to date on the capital projects that we have. It does also provide a report on the financial impact arising from the COVID pandemic. I'm not going to go through that in detail because obviously finance isn't my speciality, so I don't want to get confused in what I'm talking about. But overall, I think for the performance report, it is fair to say that during the third quarter, yes, we're still impacted because of the pandemic, but as Cabinet mentioned on Monday night, we're doing very well, continuing to run the day-to-day services. Some areas are having to be run differently, but we're still doing this on top of having to respond to the crisis. And obviously that involves taking on additional tasks. And Cabinet were very thankful to staff. And overall, I think it is fair to say that we do continue to perform well as a council, despite everything that continues to be thrown at us. I'm happy to take any questions.
Chairman, your microphone is switched off.
Well spotted. Okay, thank you very much for that Tracy. It's very, very thorough report and very comprehensive as normal. So really appreciate that. I think Councillor Rose came in very early for a question, so I'm going to let him go first. So Councillor Rose.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Could I just, through your officers, to say to Tracy that quite happy to receive the verbal report regarding Widham Town Park work. And I don't think it'd be necessary for it to produce a written report, Chairman. Quite happy to receive and note the verbal report that you gave in the presentation.
Okay, thank you for that. Does anybody else have any questions? Nobody's in the chat function at the moment. Well, while you're thinking about it, I've got a few questions. I think the point that Tracy made about the finances is a very good one. And when you look at I always look at the bottom line figure at the end compared with budget. And it does show in this report that it shows after all the COVID grants and the savings that have been made, there is a surplus or contribution to balances of £143,000 predicted for the year. Now, with everything that's gone on, I think that's absolutely amazing. And, you know, it's been a turbulent year. And I think to end up, we're not quite there yet, but to show that we're heading that way is a very good position. And I think as a group, we should thank our staff for an excellent job they've been doing in such a difficult time, and to have such a result is excellent. I will just add one little bit about the Halstead 3G pitch as an update. I actually walked down there this morning, had a look, and I can assure you it's well and truly in action, and it really is. You know, you wouldn't recognise it at the moment. It's well and truly launched and started. So it's very visual and important for the town, and we look forward to that work being completed. Does anybody else have any questions? No. I'll just add one more point, which I think Councillor Sphere's coming in a moment. But my last point really and that's regarding the amount of grants that Braintree Council has processed to local businesses. If you look at the figures, and I think they're on page 33, I think there was something like over 1,000 grants in Q3. 1,027 grants have been processed and to local businesses and distributing the money. Now, this is something that's not normally done. This is an exceptional year, and again, I think that everybody involved in that should be congratulated, because this is extra work. This is additional work that doesn't normally happen. And I'd just like to recognise that by noting that as well for that team. Okay, I do have some questions now. Councillor Sphere, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I just basically would like to back up your comments about our prudent financial position and the excellent work of officers that have worked so hard to be in that position. And I think that's a tremendous effort by our council. Also, I'd like to add to your point about the business grants from the economic development team. This has been no mean feat, considering the vast volume of money really that has been distributed very quickly to support our businesses across Braintree District. I think this has been very, very important. And again, hats off to our economic development team and the officers concerned, but especially to the comms team as well via the Facebook. I think they've done an excellent job, and the ability to answer questions and get information out very quickly has been excellent by this council. And also just generally to Tracy and the officers that are working on this, I think it's worth noting that we've got 41 projects on this performance management report that are good, and we've only got 9 amber. And I think, as Tracy said, those 9 amber are actually mostly due, if not entirely due, to the terrible situation of the pandemic and the slippage. So again, I think this performance report is actually astonishingly good, considering what the council is going through. And I think it's testament to Braintree Council that we have got all of our projects basically on track, and what a fantastic effort we are doing for our residents and businesses across Braintree District Council. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sphere. I think very points very well made. Thank you for that. Councillor Everard, do you have a question?
2 questions, really.
Oh, 2, okay.
Yeah, I just noticed an obscure question, really. Housing services on page 38. I just wondered why housing services, the projected figure is much, well, seems to be quite a bit less than the updated budget. That's one question. The other thing is that perhaps it's a naive question as well, that with the leisure centre, the work that needs to be done there, with nobody using it, it seems like a very good opportunity. But there we are. There are my 2 questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Everard. I don't know, Tracy, if you're able to answer those questions or respond to that.
I will take away the finance question,
Okay.
obviously, and I shall come back in relation to that one.
Right.
In respect of the leisure centres, I'm just scrolling down so I can get to that actual project. I think it's more to do with the fact that obviously we need to have access to the actual whole area, and the staff involved obviously need to have input into the improvements, and because those staff are furloughed, it's access to the staff that is causing the issues. Obviously, once they're out of furlough and they are working, then we obviously will be able to progress this project. But obviously what we obviously need to do is, it's not just about us going in and thinking this is what they need. We do need to improve them. We need to get the feedback from the people that actually use the facilities as well, for them to be involved in what it is that they actually want to improve there, so that we can make sure that we're doing it to the specification that's required, and obviously even so that it will get used. We do know that obviously we want to resurface the athletics track, and yes, it would be good to be able to get in there whilst there isn't anybody using it. But again, like we say, we do need the involvement of the actual staff from Fusion, and that is where the delay is really because of them being furloughed.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So, sorry, Councillor Everard, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. That does explain it pretty well. Thanks.
Okay, and there'll be a written question on the finance issue. Thank you. Okay, there's nothing else in the chat box. No, I don't think so. No, I think we're good. So does anyone else have any further questions before we close off on this one? No. Okay, well, thank you once again, Tracy, for coming this evening and giving us this update. Members, we've been asked to note the report. Members, I will take your silence as assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue, please indicate via the chat function. Please can I have members' agreement that we note this report? Okay. There is nothing in the chat function, so thank you, members. Your silence is agreement. Thank you. We now proceed to item 7, which is the decision planner. Members, you're asked to note the decision planner for the period 1st of April 2021 to 31st of July 2021. Members, I will take your silence as assent. However, if a member wishes to raise an issue, please indicate via the chat function. Please can I have members' agreement that we note the decision planner? I think I have something in the chat function. Oh no, that's just a prompt on the this item. So I'm taking your assent on this as silence as assent. No questions? Okay. Thank you, members. Your silence is agreement. Well, members, as we have no items on urgent business, this item concludes as business for this evening. I will, however, therefore close the meeting of the Performance Management Board at 2024. Thank you, members, for your attendance this evening, and to those watching the broadcast via the Council's YouTube channel. I will now hand over to the meeting facilitator.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I ask the webcaster to terminate the broadcast, I would like to remind you that the Council will retain performance data relating to your connection to the meeting in the event of a legal challenge to this new way of holding meetings. Can the webcaster please confirm that the broadcast has ceased?